Hi, it's Leanne, and today we are making a lemon blueberry streusel topped coffee cake, one of my favorite flavor combinations, and we're making it in small batch form. It's a perfect amount for 2 to 4 people. Join me in the kitchen as we make small batch recipes with big taste. So, have you ever wondered why it's called coffee cake when there's actually not even any coffee in it? Well, it never fails, but every time I post a coffee cake recipe on my blog, I get the question, why is it called coffee cake when there's no coffee in it? So, I did a little Googling. Okay, so what I could find was actually the history of coffee cake actually dates back to the 1600s, back when coffee was first introduced in Europe. So the Scandinavians would serve their coffee with a sweetbread that was full of nuts and fruit and other yummy things. And then in the 1800s, they started calling it coffee cake. So there you have it, a little history lesson for today. Now let's get started. So for our coffee cake today, we're going to use a 6-inch cake pan. Now I have sprayed it and I've lined the bottom with a piece of parchment paper or wax paper because it's going to make it easier to get our coffee cake out. If you don't have this size of a pan, you could always use an 8x8 baking dish, but it is going to make your coffee cake a little thinner, and then you'll need to adjust your baking time. I've also shared a recipe for a Starbucks copycat coffee cake here. You can find it up there. And for that one, I used a 9x5 loaf pan. So you could always do that too. But if you're not using the 6-inch cake pan, you're going to have to probably slightly adjust your baking time. Just check it. You want a toothpick to come out clean. All right, we're going to start by creaming together. I have 3 tablespoons of softened butter in my bowl and 1/3 cup of sugar. And I'm going to use a hand mixer for this part, so we want to get it nice and fluffy and creamy. All right, so next, after we've got that nice and fluffy and creamed, we're going to add in 1 egg, about a tablespoon of fresh squeezed lemon juice, about a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, which I never measure, I just pour some in. And then we also have a 1/3 cup, and I am using full whole milk, full fat Greek, plain Greek yogurt. You could also use sour cream if you don't have the yogurt. Either one of them will work fine. All right, then we're just gonna mix that together till it's all incorporated. So we're ready to add in our dry ingredients. And when I do that, I like to do it by hand instead of using my hand mixer, just because with these small batch recipes, with a mixer, you can have a tendency to over mix them, and then that makes your coffee cake tough. And we don't want a tough coffee cake. So we're gonna add in, like I said, all our dry ingredients. But before we do that, we're gonna use a 1/2 cup of blueberries, all right? I'm gonna just take a little bit of my flour and just kind of toss my blueberries in it a bit, just to give them a kind of a light coating. This is supposed to help to prevent the blueberries from sinking to the bottom of the coffee cake. I find that sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, but I just do it to do it. So put the rest of my flour in there. We are going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. All right, so those are all our dry ingredients. And we're just gonna mix those together just until our dry ingredients are incorporated, or almost all incorporated, because then we'll add in our blueberries. All right, almost there. So we're gonna go ahead, pop our blueberries in, mix those in just until they're kind of evenly distributed. Then we will put them into the pan, our prepared pan. All right, and then we're gonna ready to mix up what is my favorite part, is the streusel topping. Oh, I just love that sugary, yummy goodness on top of the coffee cake. And it gives it amazing texture too. All right, get that all out. These small batch recipes, you wanna make sure you get every bit of batter out and just spread that evenly in your pan. So for our streusel topping, we're gonna use, it's basically a combination of butter, sugar, flour, and some lemon zest. So I've got 2 tablespoons of softened butter in here. Now here's a trick for you. If your butter is still kind of hard, I just take it and cut it up into little pieces, let it sit at room temperature for 5-10 minutes, and that'll soften it right up. It softens much faster that way when you have more surface space like that. So we're gonna take a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Now some coffee cakes will use brown sugar, but for this one, it's a little bit lighter. I like to use granulated sugar. 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. And then we're gonna take, this is the zest of 1 lemon. We're gonna add that in. Get it all in there because, oh, it smells so good. And when you start mixing this in with the sugar and the flour, so good. A pinch of salt. And then I'm going to add in just a couple of drops of lemon extract. I'm going to save that other half of the lemon we haven't used yet for the glaze that goes over the top. I just like putting a couple extra drop-ins just to give it a little bit more oomph, a little bit more lemon. So just, you know, if you didn't have the lemon extract, you could leave it out. It would be fine. Now I'm just going to take my hands, I washed them, and we are going to just knead kind of that butter in with the sugar and the flour to form a crumbly mixture. And as you do this, you're going to really start to smell that lemon. Oh, so good. Okay, you want to do this, you want to do it just until you have kind of like no big pieces of butter. So that it looks kind of like a coarse sand. All right, we're gonna just take all that yummy streusel topping, and it might look like a lot, but I promise you, you want it all on there. Gives us a nice crunchy topping. Just spread it on there, and then we are gonna pop it in our 350-degree oven for about 40 to 50 minutes. You can kind of stick a toothpick in and have it come out clean, and then we will add our glaze. All right, our coffee cake is out of the oven. It smells amazing. And now for the final touch, our lemon glaze. So I've got about 1/3 of a cup of powdered sugar here, and I'm just gonna take that other half of the lemon, and I'm gonna squeeze just enough juice in till I can get a nice drizzling consistency. Now, if you go too far, go ahead, add a little bit more powdered sugar in, but just keep adding the lemon juice until you get it so that you can actually drizzle it off of the end of the fork. I need a little bit more. There we go. So we have so much lemon goodness in this coffee cake. There's lemon in the actual cake, in the streusel topping, and in the glaze. So I like to let the cake totally cool before I put the glaze on so it doesn't melt into the cake. I like it to sit on top. And then just go ahead with your fork and drizzle it over the top. Now, this coffee cake, like I said, is perfect with a cup of coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I like to enjoy it with a cup of herbal tea. It's great for Easter brunch, for a luncheon, just about for anything. All right, now this coffee cake can easily serve 4 people. Cut it into 4 pieces, or if you're really hungry, 2 people. But look at that, we've got the blueberries in there, the lemon, that crunchy topping. It's perfect. So good. Now you can find this recipe and lots of other small batch recipes right down below. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for joining me in the kitchen today, and I'll see you in the next video.